All right, sport fans. So just keep going here. So we're still trying to figure out how did all this data get here. First, we have data to show. So if you were to write all this code and then you have a blank screen, well, it might be because you have no data to show. So make sure to add, so you could go to your products table and uh, bring it up in edit mode and then just start typing in rows. You would leave the first row blank because it's auto number, so it would figure that out for you. So I'm not gonna add a row now. I get sidetracked, I guess. So turn it on, and it's got data there if you have data. So we're still trying to figure out how it got there. So how did it get there? Well, we have a procedure that put the code there. And the code, here you go. So come back to this in a second. But we have, by the way, this is the name of your web page. And then above it, you type import system.data, because if we didn't, then you would have to, for this data table, you'd have to write system.data.data table. By the way, all of these ADO.NET objects have the word new here. If you forget that word new, you're going to get a weird error that is pretty hard to figure out. So please remember to put the word new there when you're creating new ADO.NET objects. And again, ADO.NET is a set of classes inside the ASP.NET stack of technologies that it was designed. It was just incredibly powerful and leapfrogging technology in 2005. But it still works, so it's still here, and actually it's very few lines of code, so I like that. This same procedure we're doing here in other languages is twice as many lines of code, so I'm happy with my tech choice. All right, so we have a connection, and that specifies which server and which database and authenticates you. We have a data adapter, which specifies, hey, if I were to run this data adapter or do something with it'll go get me my data. Select star from products, from this table. We have this command builder, and we only use that if we're going to insert, update, and delete, but we're going to insert rows into the products table, once we get into the next video here. And so what we're doing is running this data adapter over this connection, retrieving a block of data from the products table and bringing that back into the web page and putting it into an array called the data table. So we're only bringing a copy of the data from the database. We're only getting a copy of the My Products table and putting it into the web page. So when you put the data into the web page, you put into an array, and Microsoft calls it a data table. And that's exactly what this code is doing. We have this, so actually don't need some of this code. We don't need to create a new one. We already have a data adapter, so I had created a new one, but we certainly have a data table, which is our array. So with this code, when I say go get the full products list, we clear out the table first. So we are filling an array, which is holding rows of data, in this case products. So we start the go get those products procedure by clearing out the old list. So if the table, if the count of the rows of the table is more than 0, then clear it out. Rows.clear. Clear the rows out of the table. And then any fragile code, and when you connect to a database or email server, that is a fragile experience, meaning there could be something wrong with the server. And so we put in a try-catch block. Hello, kitty. And so this is where the action happens. Date adapter, it's global. By the way, these are all public shared objects. They're global. Inside a procedure, you would dimension. Let's see. Yeah, so inside a procedure, you would create a local variable, but these are global objects because we're going to use them from different places in our web page. A local object can only be used inside one procedure. A global object can be used anywhere in the web page. So we like to use global objects if we're going to be using them over and over in different ways. So here we go. How did the data get in there? We told it to. Try catch block. What is it doing? So date adapter, go run your red SQL statement and go fill the array in the web page with the data that you retrieve. So I wish it was dateadapter.fetch, but it isn't. But go fill the web page array with a copy of the data that you selected from the database using your date adapter. So date adapters are great at fetching data and then using it to go fill up a local array. And then we have this grid view on the page, GV products. The grid view is down here. So you have your data objects. So we have a grid view here, and you drag one onto the page. And then I did this auto format, classic, and okay. And so then I right click properties and made it GV products. But you use the control on the page to display the array. That's what this line says. Global, grid view. The data source, the data you're going to display is that array, that data table. So it's kind of two steps. So first specify the data source and then go ahead and bind to that. And so so this procedure runs when, well, we call it here. And when we start the web page, init, we're going to get the full product list. And we're going to call that procedure, and that procedure does its business here. And so let's just make sure it works. So right click, view in browser. By the way, I really like Chrome. And so what's this called? Save new product. If you want to switch it to Chrome, you do browse with. Right click your ASPX file, browse with, and then set as default. Choose whatever and set as default, and then go ahead and hit browse. But that's just a one-time deal. Then the rest of the time you just view in browser. And we'll just see if it pulled up the data. We're using a different data adapter this time. So I got to fix something. By the way, I'm not even upset this happened because I haven't shown you yet. So you see, we have to think about what's going on line 12. So I'll do that in a second. But it wouldn't have told us exactly that it's line 12 if we didn't, in our web page, have way up at the top here. Well, mine did it automatically. Whoops. But if it ever doesn't do it automatically, then you just type debug equals and double click true. And that's why it can give specific error messages. What line of code? So in the source mode, you go up to line 1, and you might have to put that debug is true if you are not getting specific messages that tell you this specific line number. So let me go think about this for a minute. So I must have been explaining my code, and I took out the name of the schema name. So usually now you don't have students don't have to do this. And if it didn't pull up your table, you would do DBO dot in the brackets in front of my product. So it would be see. So my table is called Featherman dot, so I had to put the Featherman dot. Most of the time, your tables are going to be DBO dot, so you might have to put that in there. DBO dot. But explain one other thing here. So I put that there, and now it works. Everything's good. So when you turn it on, it runs the INIT procedure. The INI procedure, says, hey, go run this general procedure, which knows how to go, go fetch the current product list. And so we put this code needs to be run from several places throughout the program, you'll see. So we put it in its own procedure. All right. What is this other fill schema thing? So in a prior module, you had to create the table and then add columns to the table. So now, since we made the table in our database, so that's the first part of this module, is make tables in your database. So again, you get into your database and just write tables, click a new table, and then just put your columns in there as the schema is requested, and then you've got your table there. And so here's my products, and so you can hit the design and put the table in there and hit save and put your primary key, and we talked about it. And then you bring it up in edit mode and you could change things. Okay, so we are not focusing on arrays and adding columns to arrays. We're going to automatically get the schema from the database table. So the data adapter knows which table it's working with. And so not only can the data adapter go fetch data using it knows which table to fetch data from. Not only can it fetch data into a data table, it can also fetch the schema of the table into the array. So not only can the data adapter fetch the data, which is the schema plus the columns, plus the rows, the data. Not only can it fetch the schema and the rows into the array, it could also just fetch the schema into the array, the global data table array. And so if we do that, then the array knows what columns it has. And if it knows what columns it has, then when we save a new product, we can add a new row to the array. So this is what the next video is about, although there's some error checking there, talk about. But when we add a row, so arrays have rows, and we can add a row to the array, and then so you create the new row, and then the row you fill the columns, and then you add the row to the array, and then you go save it back to the database, and then that's how you save a record. So we'll get into all this in a minute, but this ability to create a new row and that row knows what columns it has. You'll see an error, hey, that's the wrong column. So the ability to get a row, add the row to the array, and then go save it back to the database with the command builder, that is pretty good functionality. That's how you save data. Let's do that in the next video.